And we're live. Hello, 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 and welcome back to another Bindplane community call. This time in September, we have a bunch of cool stuff to show and showcase. I'm gonna say. I have, as always, I am Adnan. I do all things developer relations here at Bindplane, and I am very excited to say that I have Dakota with me today, our resident hotel collector mastermind. So please, Dakota, say hi to the kind folks out here.
Hey everyone, glad to be here today.
And yeah, you know what it means when you have Dakota on these calls. We're gonna have a very cool demo, very specifically on the hotel collector. So stick around for a second there. But as always, let me just jump through the agenda real quick, and then we can go into the nitty-gritty parts as quick as possible. So for everybody new in the community, we just want to do a quick overview again of what Bindplane is. It's just a refresher, but I bet that most of you already know, but still, let's do this. Um, Bindplane is an OpenTelemetry native telemetry pipeline. It's quite important to note this. The core functionality is to just provide a unified platform to monitor and to manage all of your telemetry. So basically route it from anywhere to anywhere else. So any source, any destination. The kicker here is on the standardize keyword, I'm gonna call it. And that's because we make it super easy to collect, process, and export all of this telemetry just because we're standardizing on OpenTelemetry. And then this in turn makes it really easy to manage a fleet of collectors just because you get access to all of these, um, say, OpenTelemetry standards. And then that again boils down to cost efficiency because you can use reductions, filters, processors that are built into OTel to just make it super easy to do that. And to show you the architecture of that, how all of this will work and how Bindplane is special, is if you look at this architecture, the middle part is your network. The right-hand side is all of the vendors, endpoints, telemetry backends that you're using. And the left-hand side is the external network where we have Bindplane right here, Bindplane Cloud. But this would work whether you have a self-hosted deployment of Bindplane Enterprise as well. The kicker here is that the middle part where the collectors are, they're responsible for collecting all the data, so all of your telemetry data. The plane, so Bindplane, is a central control plane that manages the collectors. The communication happens between the collectors and Bindplane via OpAMP. So this is a special protocol that's developed by the OpenTelemetry community. And the key thing to remember here is that none of the data goes through Bindplane. All of the data goes through your collectors in your network. The config parts, that's how Bindplane communicates with the collectors. And that happens inside out. So the collectors open up a WebSocket connection via TLS. So you only need to open up an outbound port from the collectors from your network to Bindplane on 443 for this connection to work. And then this stays open because obviously it's a WebSocket. And that's the thing that you definitely want to remember. And that's the cool part in how this control plane communicates, or actually how Bindplane as a control plane communicates with the collectors. We're specifically focused here on the Bindplane distro for OpenTelemetry, but with all of our bring your own collector releases in the last month or so, we are actually going to show you and demo a bit about how you can build your own collector and connect it to Bindplane. And with that, we can jump into the hot topics for the month of September. So three really big ticket items that the team is super proud of for the work so far since last month's community call. And that's specifically how we help the customer boost their Kafka receiver performance in the hotel collector. I always love sharing engineering wins just because they're actual customer problems that were solved, and I really, really like sharing those. Dakota is going to show you more about that. And then, of course, one thing that the product team is very proud of is that we now have a growth plan. So there's a self-serve option for anybody out there that needs to increase their throughput, but they still don't need enterprise support. An enterprise throughput, you can use a growth plan. I'll show you that in a bit as well. And then obviously I mentioned BYOC, so bring your own collector. I'm going to show you how for all of our enterprise plan customers, you can very easily build a collector and then connect it to Bindplane. And with that, I'm going to hand over to the microphone to Dakota real quick for him to do a very interesting Kafka run through, specifically Kafka receiver run through, if I'm right.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Adnan. Um, so yeah, today I want to talk about a situation one of our customers found themselves in and how we were able to help them cut down their partition backlogs and keep up with their production volume. Um, so this customer is using the OpenTelemetry collector to pull events from Kafka using the Kafka receiver um, that's available in OpenTelemetry. They came to us because their backlog for their partitions were growing, and the receiver just was not able to keep up. Um, at the time that we came to them, they were doing just 12,000 events per second per partition. Um, they needed it to be closer to 30,000 events per second, and they were falling behind. Um, so yeah, that is what they came to us with, and so at that point, it's a matter of talking to the customer, understanding their environment, and seeing what parameters and what changes we can make to improve throughput and just get as close as we can to that 30,000. Um, so in this blog post here, we kind of outline the different approaches we used and what we eventually settle on for the best way of helping this customer reach their target. Um, so I'm actually going to start with fix number 2. I think that's going to be a bit easier to show. So right now, if I pop back over to Bindplane, I've got this collector here running connected to Bindplane. I've got it here in this terminal, and I'm going to walk through how we um, set the Franz Go feature gate. So Franz Go, the upstream Kafka receiver, um, there's different clients that uses to talk to Kafka. There's a new feature gate for a new type of client called Franz Go. It's supposed to be more performant than the existing client. So this is how we kind of help the user to enable this Franz Go client instead of the existing one. So here I've got this command to edit my service file, and I'm going to paste in. So we're editing the service, we're editing our environment variable. And then now I'm going to exit. Cool. So I've edited the file. And so now the collector should be using the feature gate. I don't think I exited correctly. I didn't save it. But so it's just a matter of editing the service file. Um, and the collector will restart using the FranzGo Kafka client. So that was fix number 1. Um, you know, the client definitely is more efficient than the previous collector or consumer client, um, but it wasn't enough. So then we have to look at the pipeline that we're using and what changes we can make there. So that brings us to fix number 1, which is how we are batching. So batching earlier on in the pipeline is better when you've got, later on in the pipeline, you might have some other processes, but you're really not doing a ton. Um, when your processes are going to be executing on every single log, that's where batching after that is going to be more efficient. And you can avoid batching data that's later going to be dropped, doing unnecessary work. So in this case, in this pipeline here, I've got a couple processors in the pipeline. So I'm going to choose the batch earlier on. Now I can just look for the batch processor here. There's some configuration variables we can tweak here as well. Basically, just like how many logs we want to wait for until we continue and send the batch down the pipeline. But there, so simple as just including our batch processor earlier on in the pipeline, as close to the receiver as we can get it. And again, that helps a lot, but it's not enough on its own. So using that in combination with the Franz Go client, at this point we are getting the customer up to 23,000 events per second. Much better than the 12,000 that we started with, but still not enough, not close to our 30,000. And this led us to really the biggest performance gain. So with Kafka, the receiver specifically, you can choose the encoding type that you are pulling the event from, or you're pulling the logs from Kafka, the encoding type you want it to be in. And what we noticed is our customer was using OTLP JSON encoding, which is a valid encoding. The primary use case for it, though, is if you already have data in Kafka structured as OTLP JSON. And OTLP JSON is the JSON representation of OpenTelemetry's data format. Um, and so they're using this encoding, but their data was not actually OTLP formatted data. It was just normal JSON. And so what we found was, changing this to just using normal JSON encoding actually made the biggest impact on, their throughput. Because now we're not spending time doing extra work converting from OTLP JSON to JSON. Something to note, using just raw encoding, we're just taking it as it is in Kafka. That's probably the most efficient way for pulling data from Kafka. Um, using that, we saw even greater performance. Um, but when we're doing that, we're still going to have to end up parsing the JSON eventually, depending on where you want to send your data. In this case, the customer did want to parse their data. Um, so it's shifting the parsing from in the receiver to later on in the pipeline. So in this case, we just kept it in the receiver, just using the JSON encoding. And after that, we found ourselves right around the target that we were looking for. Their backlog was no longer growing, and after a couple of days, it actually went away. So that was great. We're able to resolve the customer's production issues, get their receivers caught back up, restore their observability into their system. And it's a big win for them.
Yeah, this is really cool to see a real life example of how configuration tuning can make such a big difference. I mean, it's more than just tuning. It's a bunch of testing and figuring out how the pipeline behaves. But yeah, the Franz Go change was I think a very interesting thing because I think they're looking into making that the default eventually.
Yeah.
So I think from this point of view of what you did, Dakota, that this is going to be a big deal for the community as a proof of we should probably switch to Franz Go as the default moving forward, right? But also one thing that I found interesting here is for specifically the location where you actually send the logs. So at the end of the pipeline, the destination.
Yeah.
How does that vary based on if it's going to something like a CM like SecOps or if it's going to a telemetry backend like whatever, Datadog or something that's OTLP? Did you see any differences there?
Yeah. So the destination also impacts the performance of your pipeline. Um, Mostly just because, your destination, it's got to do its own work to ingest the data from the pipeline and then send it off. And a lot of that is converting the data into whatever format the destination requires it in. And so in this case here, I'm just sending to our dev null destination. It's just a null op exporter. It basically just pulls the data from the pipeline and that's it. It just acknowledges it. It's really helpful for debugging and testing. And so that's why we were using it. And we saw that, again, with the no op exporter, that's our highest possible throughput just because our exporter doesn't need to do anything on the data. There's no processing being done. But then, this customer, they wanted to send to SecOps to SIEM. And so, there actually is some amount of work that needs to be done to do that. And what we saw is sending to SecOps using gRPC um, was actually slower than using HTTPS. And what that means is just that the gRPC exporter needs to do a bit more work. And so it introduces this concept called back pressure, where at the end of our pipeline, our exporter isn't able to pull events from the pipeline fast enough and send them. So it's going to cause the rest of the pipeline to back up, eventually making its way to the receiver, where the receiver just isn't able to push events down the pipeline fast enough. And so we recommended the user or the customer to switch to HTTPS. And that also further helped to increase their throughput. So that's just another consequence to keep in mind when you're building your pipelines is what the export is going to do as well. So yeah, when you're thinking of pure throughput, you might think it's a matter of how fast you can pull data from your sources, which that is a big factor. But what's happening further down in the pipeline is also a big factor too. This concept of back pressure and what we saw with the exporter is very similar to what was going on with batching. It's a similar kind of concept.
That's really interesting. That's
So
really
yeah,
interesting. Yeah, this is going to be a big deal for the community once we're figuring out how to set up new defaults. I think that's going to be a big impact. So yeah, from this point of view, it's super interesting. But yeah, thanks Dakota for. I'm going to call this a teaser because Dakota is going to be back with a more hands-on topic at the end of the month, but you're going to have to wait another second before you learn more about that. But for now, one thing that I am actually super proud of, and I have to say that at our team as well, is the addition of our new growth plan. So we have something in between the free and the enterprise where you can self-serve and get onto a plan that has more throughput and more features. As simple as that. You don't really have to talk to anybody. You just want more collectors, more throughput, higher usage limits. You could just throw in a credit card and you're good to go. If you then need more support or more help or even more throughput than whatever the 50 gigabytes per day or 50 collectors, then you can, just shoot us a message in Slack and we'll get you set up for enterprise. It's a massive thing for the team, and super happy that we finally reached that point. And yeah, now for the last one that I do want to show you really quickly, very similar topic on using the collector, but this is more of a building a custom collector topic. One thing that we've quite extensively worked on is the OpenTelemetry distribution builder. So that's it's a repository, but it's an open source repository, but it's also a GitHub action that we deployed to the marketplace that lets you do something very cool like this. So I've just created a repo, I've created a release, and it's just built me a bunch of different versions for my custom collector. How, you're asking? Well, I have a manifest. I've set up the modules I want in my manifest. I've given it a workflow, and this workflow is going to build my collector for all these platforms. It's going to package it, and it's then, of course, going to put all of these artifacts back into my release once it gets created. So this is running or push on tags. That's what happens. If I want to go into the actions just to show you how it works, here's an action that was built. So it generated all of my collectors here in my release. Now, if I want to run this, I'll pop into my VM. So this is just a little VM that has a collector config, as you can see here, with some telemetry. It's just going to start spitting out some logs. And then if I do just run it. So I just basically just do a wget, and then you pull in this tar, you untar it, you get the binary file, and then you want to do my custom OpenTelemetry distro. I want to give it a config, and I want to give it the collector config YAML. So this is going to start my collector. It's going to use this config I've set up. I've set up OpAMP for it to communicate with Bindplane. And if I go back into my Bindplane instance and go and say, just look for it, I can here see my collector running connected to Bindplane, which is of course via OpAMP. Now this is a very simplistic point of view of how you can do it. If you want to run your own OpAMP endpoints, you can do that as well. If you just want to run your collector without caring about anything, you can also just do that as well. It's all up to you. But how we take it a step further is actually, what if I actually want to add my custom collector as a agent type in Bindplane? So I can do all of these fancy things where I can pick my type, can pick the platform, but I can also pick the config and see which modules are available for this particular custom collector. Well, that's not that big of a deal either. I create a YAML file for the agent type, as you can see. I give it a name. I point to my repository where all of my artifacts are built. Tell it what my platforms are, and then I go ahead and hit apply. Now, once I do hit the apply, I'll get it added to my list here. I can select it. I get the option for which architectures it will work for, and I can again get a generic install. So now if I do run this, obviously already pre-run this because the demo gods are never on my side. Once I actually do run this, this is going to install a systemctl. So let me do, so it's going to be sudo systemctl status my custom. So yeah, if I knew how to type, right, Dakota? This is the demo gods I've been talking about. You were doing very, very well. No hiccups. There we go. So now it's stopped. If I want to go ahead and start it, I can go ahead and start it, and it's going to pop up in my agents. If I do look for a custom name, there we go. And then obviously I can, via Bindplane, I can go ahead and create a config. And if I create a config, I can do, again, just call it my custom collector. If I select my custom distro type, select Linux, and go ahead and click next. Here, I can see which modules or which sources specifically are incompatible and which will work with my collector. So, I mean, let's just, for the sake of brevity, select an OTLP and select an OTLP destination as well. But here I can see if I scroll down, again, I see which modules are incompatible. And that's the power of, having a custom collector built. So this is going to specifically, you get to choose what you want to have in your collector. You get slimmer binaries, you get less attack surface for security breaches, you get the ability to run it in the edge on FAS. So there's just benefits here. And then again, you control the way you build it. You control exactly what goes into it. You control the versioning. You control how and where you're pulling these artifacts into your VMs or servers or Kubernetes, whatever environments you're using. Yeah, that's pretty much the gist of the demos that we wanted to show. But one big thing, though, that I just mentioned as a teaser, all of what Dakota talked about the Kafka performance tuning that him and the rest of the team did, Dakota is actually going to talk about that a bit more hands-on at the end of the month. So the OTel in Practice team, so the OpenTelemetry community's official webinars, they have actually invited Dakota to do a hands-on session with them about this particular topic. So do stay tuned for that. They're going to send out, I think today or tomorrow, they're going to create the actual event invite, so you can all sign up for that. And stay tuned. So September 24th is the date on that. Yeah, really looking forward to that. Dakota is probably more hyped than I am, but let's
It'll be a good time.
We're gonna have a yeah, it's gonna be a great time. And then of course, staying and obviously being respectful of your time. Um, if you want to go into deeper, learn more about both the Kafka receiver and how to build and run your custom collectors, we do have blog posts on both of these topics. So both of the demos we did, there are in-depth blog posts in our blog that you can check out and learn more about that. We don't really want to take more of your time for today. And then, yeah, how does all of this relate to all of our product updates for the month? Well, we've done pretty extensive work on AWS S3, which was a big thing in end of July and beginning of August. We now have a new audit logging source, specifically Bindplane audit logs as a source. We have updated our security and compliance for everybody that cares about SOC and GDPR. You can check out the security page on our website for that. We do have removed the legacy support for OpAMP, so you will need to update your B. version to 1.37.0 or above. And then one big one for our enterprise customers is that we actually moved our B. collector upgrades from GitHub to our own b.bindplane.com domain. So now all of the collector upgrades actually go through us instead, which is a big deal for people that are concerned about security. And yeah, one more thing that I think the sales team is they're over the moon about, very happy about, is that we just had another success story from one of our customers, specifically a case study. So if you want to pop over to our case study section on the website, you'll see how we ended up helping a major healthcare provider save $2 million in overage costs. So that's a pretty interesting story, and really happy to have that out there as well. Then for community shoutouts, we have 4 new docs guides if you want to learn more about bringing your own collector, specifically on building images, on building custom collectors, using OpAMP and connecting it to Bindplane. Now, of course, all of these guides were written and or edited by Dakota, so he's the superstar behind pretty much everything you can see here, as well as the webinar at the end of the month. So yeah, big round of applause for Dakota. And then, of course, if you missed the workshop we did on the OpenTelemetry deep dive, so Mike and myself, we did that at the end of last month. If you do want to check out the recording, you can always do that on YouTube as well. Yeah, really happy with the attendance there. Thank you so much for joining us, and means a lot of us to see you from the community actually wanting to see more of those OTel, specifically OTel deep dives. And yeah, to be respectful for your time, I'm not going to stick around too much with questions. If you're all cool with that, we can always chat more in Slack. And yeah, as a recap, a ton new BYOC and collector updates, super cool Kafka receiver performance increases that Dakota has been spearheading. And yeah, you can always check out our collector high availability workshop. That's the recording is on YouTube. And do stay tuned for the OTel in Practice webinar that's going to come out actually go live at the end of this month. Yeah, any last words, Dakota? If not, I'm happy to give the community back 2 minutes.
Yeah, nothing for me. Excited to see everyone at the webinar.
Yeah, super hyped about that. And I will make sure everybody is in the loop. So once I get the first-hand info on when the sign-up page or the actual page itself goes live, I will make sure to share it in our community. We'll let everybody know in Slack once that's ready. And yeah, let's go and support Dakota as best we can and actually learn something new about Kafka. Yeah, cool. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, until next time, stay cool and have a great month.